They gave me 11 hours. 11 hours to shower, shave, read the briefing packet, fly from Geneva to the UN orbital platform, board a diplomatic shuttle I'd never seen before, and cross 400 light-years of folded space to attend a summit I hadn't been invited to until someone more important died. Ambassador Alara Voss, the real ambassador, the one who had spent 9 years building the relationships that kept humanity from becoming a footnote, suffered a brain hemorrhage at her desk on a Tuesday afternoon. She was 51. She had no understudy because she was the kind of person who believed she'd live forever through sheer stubbornness, and for 9 years the galaxy had done nothing to prove her wrong. I was her cultural attaché, her note-taker, the person who remembered which species considered eye contact a mating invitation and which ones considered it a death threat. I carried her bags. I refilled her water. I proofread her speeches and removed the profanity she always slipped in during first drafts. My name is Thomas Kane, and I was the least qualified human being alive for what I was about to walk into. The briefing packet was 600 pages. I read it on the shuttle while a medtech injected me with the translational nanosuite that would let my brain process 5 alien language families simultaneously. The injections felt like someone was stapling my thoughts to the inside of my skull. I threw up twice. The medtech handed me a towel both times without comment. The packet told me everything and nothing. The Concord of Five, the 5 dominant empires of the local galactic volume, had called an emergency summit at the Fulcrum, a diplomatic station built in neutral space specifically for occasions when the great powers needed to measure each other without destroying anything. The last summit had been 40 years ago. That one had ended in a treaty. The one before that had ended in a war that sterilized 11 star systems. The agenda was one line: demonstration of strategic supremacy and formal positioning of emergent species. I read that line 4 times. Emergent species. That was us. Humanity had been a spacefaring civilization for 62 years. We had colonies in 9 systems. We had a navy that could defend exactly 3 of them. We had been trading with the Concord powers for less than a decade, and in the galactic political hierarchy, we ranked somewhere between tolerated and ignored. Now the 5 most powerful civilizations in existence had called a summit to formally position us. I put down the briefing packet and stared at the wall of the shuttle for a long time. "Sir," the medtech said, "your heart rate is elevated." "Yeah," I said, "it's going to stay that way." The Fulcrum looked like God had taken a cathedral, a space station, and a coral reef, and crushed them together in his fist until they agreed to coexist. It was 3 kilometers across. It rotated slowly in the light of a dying orange star. Docking spires jutted from its surface like the spines of some deep ocean creature, and as our shuttle approached, I counted the ships already moored there. The Rathani had sent a dreadnought. It was obsidian black, angular, brutal. A ship designed to make you understand that the Rathani did not negotiate from positions of anything less than absolute dominance. They were the oldest empire in the Concord. They had been building warships before Earth had multicellular life. The Valeth delegation had arrived in something that looked like a living organism, a bioship, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted in real time. The Valeth were genetic architects. They didn't build technology, they grew it. Every ship, every weapon, every tool in their civilization was alive. The Corvain had parked a stealth carrier so black it was visible only as a ship-shaped absence of stars. The Corvain were information brokers, spy masters, and assassins. They had toppled governments with a single well-placed sentence. Their weapons were secrets. The Dotharon had brought a mobile fortress, a spherical vessel half a kilometer in diameter, bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon. The Dotharon were engineers. They built things that lasted. Their empire was the youngest of the 5, and they compensated for this with an almost religious devotion to overwhelming force. And the Thessari had sent a single, small, elegant ship that looked like a silver leaf. No visible weapons, no escort. The Thessari didn't need to show you their power. They were psionics. Every member of their species could touch your mind if they chose to. Their weapon was standing in the room. Against all of that, the human delegation arrived in a diplomatic shuttle with a malfunctioning coffee maker and a cultural attaché who had vomit on his sleeve. I cleaned up in the shuttle's tiny lavatory, put on the formal suit that had been packed for Alara, and discovered it didn't fit me because Alara had been 5'2" and I was 6'1". An aide on the orbital platform had packed a backup. It was charcoal gray, fitted, and made me look like I was attending a funeral. Given the circumstances, that felt appropriate. The summit chamber was called the Hall of Demonstration. I understood why the moment I walked in. The room was enormous, a cavernous space at the heart of the fulcrum, with a domed ceiling that displayed the actual stars outside in real time. The floor was polished stone of some kind, dark and reflective, so that walking across it felt like walking on the surface of a still black lake. 5 elevated platforms surrounded a central stage, each one positioned for one of the conquered powers. Each platform was an architectural statement. The Rithani platform was carved from something that looked like volcanic glass. The Vilith platform was grown from living wood that breathed. The Corvain platform was matte black and featureless. The Datharan platform was polished steel and hard edges. The Thessari platform was a single curved piece of crystal that seemed to float. And at the far end, below all of them, set into the floor like an afterthought, was a 6th platform. It was bare metal, undecorated, positioned so that anyone standing on it had to look up at everyone else. That was ours. I had 3 staff members with me. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen was my military advisor, a compact woman with short dark hair, and the kind of calm that comes from having survived things she would never discuss at dinner parties. Dr. Marcus Webb was our xenoanthropologist, a lanky man in his 60s who had spent 30 years studying alien cultures and had the social skills of a distracted heron. And Priya Mehta was my communications officer, young, sharp, and terrified in a way she was working very hard to hide. We stood on our bare metal platform and looked up at 5 empires looking down. "Welcome," said the moderator. The moderator was a construct, an AI built by all 5 conquered powers specifically for these summits, designed to be precisely neutral. It spoke from everywhere and nowhere, its voice filling the chamber like weather. The Concord of Five convenes to address the formal positioning of the emergent species known as humanity within the galactic political structure. In accordance with the right of demonstration, each Concord power will present evidence of strategic supremacy. The emergent species will then be granted opportunity to respond before formal positioning is determined. I leaned toward Chen. "What exactly is formal positioning?" She didn't look at me. "It determines whether we're recognized as a sovereign civilization or classified as a protectorate." "A protectorate." "A vassal state, sir, belonging to whichever empire makes the strongest claim." The chamber seemed to get colder. "The right of demonstration," the moderator continued, "is ordered by seniority. The Rithani Dominion will present first." The Rithani delegate was called High Commander Vorath. He was 7 feet tall, armored in ceremonial plate that looked like it could stop a railgun round, and he moved with the slow, deliberate confidence of something that had never once in its life needed to hurry. He stepped to the edge of his platform and spoke in a voice that resonated in my ribs. "The Rithani Dominion has maintained galactic order for 9,000 years. We present the Axiom-class planet killer." The dome above us flickered. The stars were replaced by a recording of feed from deep space, the timestamp marking it as 3 days old. A Rithani fleet hung in formation around a barren world. At the center of the fleet sat a ship I couldn't process at first because my brain refused to accept the scale. It was 30 kilometers long. It looked like a spear made of black iron, and its forward section was open, revealing an energy aperture that glowed with the pale blue of a dying star. The recording played. The weapon fired. A beam of light connected the ship to the planet's surface. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the planet cracked open like an egg. It didn't explode. It broke. The mantle split along thermal fault lines, the core destabilized, and the entire world came apart in a bloom of magma and debris that expanded outward in a sphere of annihilation. The recording ended. The stars returned. Vorath looked down at me. "The Rithani Dominion can unmake worlds," he said. "This is our claim to supremacy. This is why the emergent species would do well to accept our guidance." Behind me, Priya made a small sound. I didn't blame her. "Noted," I said, because I didn't know what else to say, and my voice only cracked a little. The Valith were next. Their delegate was called the Blossom Speaker, and she The pronoun was approximate, looked like someone had crossbred a human woman with an orchid and a deep-sea jellyfish. She was beautiful in the way a venomous thing is beautiful. So striking that your brain forgot to be afraid until it was too late. The Valeth Collective does not build weapons, the Blossom speaker said. Her voice was musical, layered, as if three people were singing the same words in slightly different keys. We grow solutions. The dome shifted again. This time it showed a Valeth bioship approaching a hostile fleet. Ships that belonged to a species I didn't recognize, some conflict from centuries past. The bioship released a cloud of something. It looked like pollen. Golden, drifting, almost pretty. The pollen reached the enemy fleet, and in the space of 90 seconds, every ship in that fleet was consumed. The hulls dissolved. The metal broke down into component molecules. The pollen ate the fleet the way a fungus eats a fallen tree thoroughly, efficiently, and without any apparent effort. When it was done, there was nothing left. Not debris, not wreckage, just empty space and a gently dispersing golden cloud. We call it the Garden's Answer, the Blossom speaker said, a self-replicating biodissolution agent. It can be tuned to any material composition, any alloy, any polymer, any organic compound. She paused, including the specific biochemistry of any given species. She looked at me and I understood the threat that lived inside the beauty. The Valeth Collective can dissolve civilizations at the molecular level, she said. We present this as our claim. I swallowed. Noted. The Corvain delegate didn't show a weapon. He showed something worse. His name was Factor 9 at least. That was his diplomatic designation. The Corvain didn't share real names. They were tall, thin, gray-skinned, with faces that carried no readable expression, and eyes that absorbed light without reflecting it. Talking to a Corvain felt like being watched by a security camera that had learned to make small talk. Factor 9 stepped forward and the dome didn't change. No recording played. Instead, he simply spoke. The Corvain Nexus does not engage in spectacle, he said. His voice was flat, precise, the verbal equivalent of a scalpel. We find it unnecessary. Instead, I will share a brief demonstration of our methodology. He looked at Vorath. High Commander, the Rathani Third Fleet is currently repositioning to the Keth Corridor, which violates the demilitarization clause of the Treaty of Voss. You have done this because you believe the corridor's sensor network was disabled by a solar flare 6 days ago. It was not. We disabled it ourselves and allowed you to observe the flare. Your fleet movements have been documented and transmitted to every member of the Concord. Vorath's armored hands tightened on the railing of his platform. Factor 9 turned to the Blossom speaker. Blossom speaker, the Valeth research station at Lumen 4 has been running unsanctioned experiments in cross-species bioadaptation. Specifically, you have been attempting to grow organisms capable of surviving in Thesari neural environments. The Thesari are aware of this. They have been aware for 11 months. They chose not to inform you that they know because they wanted to see how far you would go. The Blossom speaker went very still. On the Thesari platform, there was a ripple of movement. Factor 9 turned to the Dotharan delegate. Grand Architect, your government is 17 months from a fiscal collapse that will require the liquidation of your outer colonies. You have concealed this from your own population. The documents are already in our archive. The Dotharan delegate, a stocky, heavy-browed being encased in powered engineering armor, said nothing, but I watched his hands tremble. Factor 9 looked at the Thesari. Speaker of silence, your eldest daughter has been conducting unauthorized psionic contact with members of 3 other species. You are aware of this. You have chosen not to stop her because her contacts are providing intelligence you cannot otherwise obtain. We know who she is speaking with. We know what she has learned. And we know what you plan to do with that information. The Thesari delegate, a willowy, pale figure draped in silver, with eyes that seemed to contain entire weather systems, made no response at all. But the crystal platform beneath her feet developed a crack. Factor 9 turned to me. My stomach dropped. Ambassador Kane, he said, you were not supposed to be here. Ambassador Voss was. She died of a cerebral hemorrhage 41 hours ago. Your government chose you as a replacement because you were available, not because you were qualified. You have no diplomatic authority beyond what was hastily granted in an emergency session 6 hours before your departure. Your credentials are technically valid but functionally hollow. You are, by any reasonable assessment, the weakest person in this chamber." I stood there and felt every word land like a round in the chest. He was right. Every word was right, and he knew I knew it. "The Corvan Nexus does not destroy worlds," Factor 9 said, turning to address the full chamber. "We do not dissolve fleets. We do not crack minds. We simply know everything. And knowledge, applied with precision, makes all other weapons obsolete." He paused. "This is our claim." The chamber was silent. I looked at Chen. She was staring straight ahead, jaw tight. Webb was scribbling something in his notebook with a hand that wasn't entirely steady. Priya had gone pale. "Noted," I said. The Dotheran went forth. Grand Architect Torvan was a wall of a being broad, dense, built like his species had evolved to shoulder-check mountains out of the way. His engineering armor whirred and clicked as he moved, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like gravel being processed into concrete. "The Dotheran Collective builds," he said. "We have always built, and what we build endures." The dome showed a Dotheran construction fleet assembling something in deep space. The process was accelerated, weeks compressed into minutes, but even sped up, the scale was staggering. They were building a ring, a solid ring of metal and energy emitters that encircled an entire star. "The stellar harness," Torvan said. "We capture the total energy output of a star and convert it into usable power. We have built 9. Each one generates more energy than the combined output of every human power source that has ever existed, multiplied by a factor of 11 million. He let that number sit in the room. "With this energy, we have constructed defense platforms that can project force across an entire stellar system simultaneously. No fleet can approach a Dotheran core world. No weapon can breach a Dotheran fortification. We do not attack, we do not need to. We simply build walls that nothing in this galaxy can break." The recording showed a simulated assault, hundreds of ships converging on a Dotheran system, only to be met with a lattice of energy beams so dense it looked like the star itself was defending its children. Every attacking ship was destroyed in seconds. "The Dotheran Collective is invulnerable," Torvan said. "This is our claim." "Noted," I said. My voice was steady this time, but only because I'd stopped feeling anything. My body had simply run out of fear and moved into a kind of numb clarity that I'd later learn was a survival mechanism. The Thesari were last among the conquered powers. Speaker of Silence moved to the edge of her crystal platform. She didn't speak immediately. She looked at each delegate in turn, and I watched them react. Vorath shifted his weight. The Blossom Speaker's tendrils contracted. Factor 9 went very still. Torvan's armor locked. Each of them felt her attention like a physical weight. Then she looked at me. I can't describe what it was like. I've tried in the years since, and I always fail. It was not pain. It was not pleasure. It was presence, a sudden, absolute awareness that another mind was very close to mine, separated by the thinnest membrane, and that membrane could be dissolved at her discretion. She held me there for 3 seconds. Then she withdrew, and I gasped like I'd been underwater. "The Thesari communion does not need weapons," she said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle, and it came from inside my head as much as from the air. "We are the weapon." The dome showed nothing. Instead, the Speaker of Silence simply extended her hand, and every delegate in the room, every person on every platform, felt something. I saw Vorath stagger. The Blossom Speaker's bioluminescence flickered and died. Factor 9 grabbed the railing of his platform. Torvan's armor system squealed, and I experienced a memory that wasn't mine, a Thesari memory. I was standing on the surface of an alien world, looking up at a sky filled with ships, and I understood with perfect clarity that I could reach into every mind on every ship and simply turn them off. Not kill them, just stop them. Erase their consciousness like wiping a window. Leave the bodies alive but empty. The memory ended. I was back in the hall of demonstration, gripping the railing of my platform, breathing hard. "The Thesari communion can extinguish consciousness across any distance in any number at any time," the Speaker of Silence said. "We have never done so. We consider it immoral. But the capacity exists, and it is our claim." The chamber was very quiet. Noted, I whispered. The moderator's voice returned. The 5 Concord powers have presented their claims of strategic supremacy. The emergent species is now granted opportunity to respond before formal positioning is determined. Ambassador Kane, you have the floor. I had the floor. I stood on my bare metal platform in my funeral suit, and I had the floor. I looked up at 5 civilizations that could, individually, erase humanity from existence before breakfast. A species that could crack our planets. A species that could dissolve our bodies at the molecular level. A species that knew every secret we'd ever tried to keep. A species that could build fortifications our weapons couldn't scratch. And a species that could reach into our minds and turn off the lights. They had shown me planet killers and bioweapons and intelligence networks and stellar engineering and psychic extinction. And I was supposed to respond. I turned to Chen. Tell me honestly, do we have anything? She met my eyes. We have the Defiance-class carrier group, 12 ships, best we've built. Would it impress them? Her pause was answer enough. No, sir. I turned to Webb. Marcus, in your professional assessment, is there any aspect of human technology, military capability, or scientific achievement that would constitute a credible claim in this room? Webb looked at me over his glasses. He had the decency not to soften it. No, not even close. I turned to Priya. Get me the Secretary General. Sir, the communication delay to Earth is... I know what the delay is. I need to talk to someone, anyone. Get me the line. She worked her console. I can reach the orbital platform. Director Chen is available. Put him through. Private channel. I pressed the earpiece deeper. Director Chen, no relation to my lieutenant commander, was the head of the UN's Extraterrestrial Affairs Division. He was a soft-spoken man from Shanghai who had the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster and the emotional warmth of a filing cabinet. Thomas, he said, I've been watching the feed. Then you know I have nothing. You have what Ambassador Voss would have had. Ilara would have had a plan. Ilara would have had 9 years of relationships and a reputation that... Thomas. His voice was quiet but firm. Ilara is gone. You're there. What do you see? I looked around the chamber. I looked at the 5 platforms. I thought about what I'd just witnessed. The planet cracking, the dissolution, the secrets, the walls, the mines. I see 5 civilizations that are afraid of each other, I said. Silence on the line. Every demonstration was aimed at the other 4, I said. Not at us. We're the excuse. We're the reason for the summit, but we're not the audience. They're showing their weapons to each other. They're saying, don't think you can use the emergent species as a proxy. Don't think you can absorb them and gain an advantage. We're all still here. We're all still dangerous. Director Chen was quiet for a moment. That's a good read. It doesn't help me. I still have to respond. I still have to make a claim, or they'll partition us like a conquered territory. Then make a claim. With what? Another pause. Then, Thomas, do you still carry that photograph? I went still. The one in your wallet. Ilara told me about it. She said you carry it everywhere. My hand went to my jacket pocket. The wallet was there, thin and worn. Inside it, folded and refolded along the same creases for 7 years, was a photograph. That's not a weapon, I said. No, Director Chen agreed. It's not. But I watched those 5 presentations, Thomas, and I'll tell you what I saw. I saw 5 civilizations that are terrified, and they have the power to end worlds, and they are terrified. Do you know why? I didn't answer. Because they have nothing worth protecting. They have power. They have supremacy. They have claims. But not one of them showed you a single thing they loved. He paused. Maybe that's worth something. The line went quiet. I stood on my platform and felt the weight of the photograph in my pocket. Ambassador Kane. The moderator's voice was patient but final. You have been granted the floor. Will you present a claim? I stepped forward. Every eye and several things that weren't eyes turned to me. I request a brief delay, I said. I need to consult with my delegation. The right of demonstration does not accommodate delays, Factor 9 said immediately. If the emergent species cannot present a claim, formal positioning will proceed based on the existing demonstrations. The Corvain Nexus recommends protectorate status under Joint Concord Administration. Seconded, Torvald said. The Valith Collective concurs, the Blossom speaker added. 3 votes out of 5. That was a majority. Vorath looked down at me from his obsidian platform. The Retheni Dominion is prepared to offer individual protectorate status. Humanity would benefit from our direct guidance. You mean our direct control, Chen muttered behind me. The Thessari Communion abstains, the Speaker of Silence said. For now. I looked at the numbers. 3 for joint protectorate, 1 for individual protectorate, 1 abstention. Every option ended with humanity as someone's possession. I will present a claim, I said. Then proceed, the moderator said. I opened my mouth, and Factor 9 spoke first. Before the ambassador proceeds, he said, the Corvain Nexus wishes to enter supplementary evidence into the record. He touched a control on his platform, and the dome above us changed. Ambassador Kane's personal history. My blood went cold. Thomas Allen Kane, Factor 9 read. Born 2089, Portland, Oregon, Earth. Educated in linguistics and cultural anthropology. Recruited to the diplomatic corps at age 26. Served as cultural attaché to Ambassador Voss for 7 years. No significant diplomatic achievements of his own. No published works, no awards, no commendations. He paused. Personal history. Married to Dr. Lena Kane, née Okonkwo, in 2117. 1 daughter, Maya Kane, born 2119. He stopped. Dr. Lena Kane and Maya Kane were killed in the Kepler 442 colony transport disaster in 2121. The transport's navigation system experienced a catastrophic failure during fold space transit. All 412 passengers were lost. There were no survivors. There were no recoverable remains. The chamber was silent. I stood perfectly still. I had trained myself to stand perfectly still when this subject came up, because the alternative was to come apart, and there were rooms where you could come apart and rooms where you couldn't, and this was the latter. The Corvain Nexus notes, Factor 9 continued, that Ambassador Kane is a man defined by a single loss. His assignment to Ambassador Voss was a compassionate placement, a role designed to keep a grieving man functional. He was not selected for this summit. He was the only option remaining after the actual ambassador died. He carries no authority, no leverage, and no capacity to speak for his species in any meaningful way. He looked at me. Those light-absorbing eyes held nothing I could read. The Corvain Nexus recommends that the Concord proceed directly to positioning. Further delay serves no strategic purpose. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. Every cell in my body was devoted to the project of not collapsing in front of 5 galactic empires, and there was nothing left over for things like words or breathing or dignity. Behind me, Chen took a step forward. The ambassador has been granted the floor, she said, but her voice was steel. Under the right of demonstration, that grant cannot be rescinded. The Corvain delegate's interruption is a procedural violation. Confirmed, the moderator said. Factor 9. You are cautioned. Ambassador Kane retains the floor. Factor 9 inclined his head slightly. He didn't apologize. The Corvain never did. I stood there. The silence stretched. 5 empires watched me, and I could feel their assessment, the Rethani sizing up a broken man, the Valith cataloging my biochemical stress responses, the Corvain satisfied that they'd removed me from the equation, the Dotharan already calculating partition logistics, the Thessari. The Thessari was watching me with something I couldn't name. Sir, Priya whispered from behind me. Sir, you don't have to. Yes, I do, I said. My voice was rough, scraped raw, but it was mine. I have the floor. I reached into my jacket pocket. I took out my wallet. I opened it and removed the photograph. It was small, printed on actual photographic paper, which even in 2128 was an anachronism. The edges were soft from handling. The colors had faded slightly. There was a crease across one corner where I'd bent it by accident 6 years ago, and had spent an hour trying to smooth it flat. The image was simple. A woman and a little girl sitting on a blanket in a park. The woman was laughing, head thrown back, eyes squeezed shut, mouth wide open in the kind of laugh that comes from the belly and doesn't care who hears it. She was dark-skinned, beautiful, with braids pulled back in a loose knot. The little girl was 2 years old, sitting in the woman's lap, holding a dandelion in one chubby fist and looking at it with the intense, absolute concentration that only a 2-year-old can achieve. The sunlight was golden, the grass was green. There were other people in the background, blurred and unimportant. That was it. A woman laughing, a child studying a flower, an afternoon in a park. I need the dome, I said. Ambassador Kane, the visual display system is calibrated for strategic presentations. I need the dome. A pause. Granted. Priya took the photograph from my hands, scanned it and transmitted it. The dome above us, the same dome that had shown planet-killing weapons and fleet-dissolving bioagents and stellar engineering, displayed a photograph of my wife and daughter in a park on a sunny afternoon on Earth. The image was 30 meters across. Every detail was visible. The weave of the blanket, the petals of the dandelion, the laugh lines around Lena's eyes, the tiny, perfect fingers of my daughter's hand. I looked up at 5 empires. Her name was Lena, I said. She was a xenobiologist. She was studying the microbial ecosystems of Kepler 442b because she believed that understanding alien life at its smallest level was the key to understanding it at every level. She talked in her sleep. She couldn't cook. She once accidentally set our kitchen on fire trying to make toast, and when I came running in, she was laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. My voice was steady. I don't know how. Some part of me had found a frequency that could transmit grief without being destroyed by it, and I was riding that frequency like a tightrope. The little girl is Maya. She was 2 in this picture. She had just discovered dandelions. She'd never seen one before because we lived in the orbital habitat and the gardens there didn't grow weeds. We were visiting my mother in Portland, and Maya found a dandelion in the yard, and she held on to it for 3 hours. She wouldn't put it down. She fell asleep holding it. I swallowed. They were on the Kepler transport because Lena had been assigned to the colony research station. I was supposed to go with them. I was delayed a scheduling conflict with Ambassador Voss's office. Lena went ahead with Maya. She said she'd set up the apartment and I'd join them in 2 weeks. I paused. The chamber was very, very quiet. The transport's fold space navigation failed 11 hours into the transit. The ship was lost with all hands. 412 people. 37 of them were children. My daughter was the youngest. I looked at the photograph on the dome. Lena's laugh. Maya's dandelion. The Corvain delegate was right, I said. I am defined by this loss. I carry this photograph everywhere I go. I have carried it for 7 years. It is the most important object I own. It is the most important object I have ever owned. I paused. And I am going to tell you why it is the only claim I need to make. I turned to Vorath first. High Commander, your planet killer is extraordinary. The engineering alone represents millennia of development. The Rathani Dominion can unmake worlds. I paused. But I need to ask you something. When the Rathani go to war, when your soldiers leave for the front, what do they carry with them? Vorath frowned. They carry their weapons, their orders, Do they carry photographs? Silence. Do your soldiers carry images of their families, their mates, their children? Do they tuck small, worn personal reminders of the people they love into their armor before they ship out? Vorath's frown deepened. Rathani warriors do not distract themselves with. That's what I thought, I said. I turned to the Blossom speaker. Your biodissolution agent is terrifying. The Valith mastery of biology is beyond anything humanity could achieve in 1,000 years. But I noticed something in your demonstration. The agent was tuned to dissolve specific material compositions. I paused. Can it be tuned to create? The Blossom speaker tilted her head. Create? Can it build a dandelion? Not a weapon, not a tool, a flower. Something beautiful and functionally useless that exists only to be held by a child in a park on a sunny afternoon. Her tendrils shifted in patterns I couldn't read. She didn't answer. I turned to Factor 9. You know everything about me. You know my pain, my loss, my limitations. You used that knowledge to try to break me in front of this assembly. I held his gaze. But here's what I find interesting. You knew about my daughter. You knew about the dandelion. You had access to every detail of my life, and yet when you presented your intelligence, you chose to frame it as weakness. I stepped forward on my platform. You looked at a man who lost everything he loved and kept going, and you saw fragility. That tells me more about the Corvain than any intelligence network ever could. Because the fact that I carry this photograph, the fact that I get up every morning and do my work and serve my species while carrying a grief that would, forgive me, dissolve most beings in this room, that is not weakness. That is the most human thing I can show you. Factor 9 said nothing. His expression didn't change, but he didn't interrupt. I turned to Torvan. Grand Architect, you build walls nothing can break. Your engineering is magnificent, truly. I gestured at the dome, at the photograph still glowing above us, but this image was taken on a planet with no orbital defenses, no stellar harness, no energy lattice. Earth is fragile. We know it's fragile, we've always known. We've had extinction-level events, ice ages, pandemics, wars that almost ended us. We have never been safe. I looked at him. And we built parks anyway. We planted gardens. We made places for children to find dandelions. Not because we were protected, but because we decided that beauty was worth building even when it could be lost, especially when it could be lost. Torvan's heavy brow was furrowed. His armor had stopped clicking. I turned finally to the speaker of silence. You can touch minds, I said. You showed me a memory, the capacity to extinguish consciousness across any distance. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I paused. But I have a question. When you touched my mind briefly, at the beginning, what did you feel? She regarded me. Those storm system eyes shifted. I ask because I think you already know what's in this photograph. Not the image, the weight of it, the 7 years of carrying it. The mornings I woke up and reached for the other side of the bed. The evenings I set 2 plates at the table before remembering. The sound of my daughter's voice, which I am already beginning to forget, and which terrifies me more than anything you showed me today. My voice broke on the last sentence. I let it. I didn't try to fix it. You can extinguish consciousness, I said, but can you create what's in this photograph? Can any of you? Can any power in this galaxy manufacture the feeling of a 2-year-old falling asleep in your arms while holding a flower she refuses to let go of? The chamber was still. I looked up at the photograph on the dome. Lena's laugh, Maya's dandelion, the golden afternoon light. And I felt the distance between that moment and this one like a physical gap in my chest. Let me tell you about humanity's weapon, I said. We don't have planet killers. We can't dissolve fleets. Our intelligence services are, I'm sure, a source of constant amusement to the Corvain. We can't build stellar harnesses, and we certainly can't touch minds. I paused. What we have is this. We love things we know we're going to lose. I let that sentence exist in the room. Every human who has ever lived has known with certainty that they are going to die, that everyone they love is going to die, that everything they build will eventually fall. We are a species that looked at the absolute certainty of loss and said, I'm going to love anyway. I'm going to build anyway. I'm going to plant flowers in a garden I won't live to see mature because someone else will see them. And that matters. I gestured at the photograph. I know that this moment is gone. Lena is gone. Maya is gone. This afternoon in the park is unreachable. And I carry it with me every single day. Not because I'm broken, because this is what humans do. We carry our losses forward. We let them make us more, not less. Every human being you will ever meet is carrying something like this. A love they lost, a person they miss, a moment they give anything to return to. And instead of letting that grief destroy them, they get up in the morning and they go to work and they raise their children and they build their cities and they reach for the stars. I looked at Vorath. Your soldiers don't carry photographs. Ours do. Every single one. They carry pictures of wives, husbands, children, parents, dogs, homes, sunsets, small, fragile, personal things that have no tactical value whatsoever. And they fight harder because of them. Not because they want to destroy the enemy, but because they want to go home. Because there is a specific, irreplaceable afternoon waiting for them, or the memory of one, and they will walk through hell itself to protect the possibility that someone, somewhere, is still having afternoons like that. I turned back to the full chamber. You want to know humanity's claim to supremacy? We don't have one. We don't have supremacy. We have something else. I took a breath. We have stakes. The word hung in the air. Every empire in this room has shown me what they can destroy, what they can dissolve, what they can know, what they can build, what they can erase, power after power after power, and all of it pointed outward, all of it designed to act upon the universe. I shook my head. You want to know what makes humanity dangerous? It isn't our weapons, it isn't our technology, it isn't our intelligence or our engineering or our minds. It's that we have something to lose and we know it, and we choose to love it anyway. That makes us insane by any rational calculation. It makes us irrational, inefficient, sentimental, and reckless. I looked up at the dome. It also makes us the only species in this room that will fight to the last breath, not for territory, not for supremacy, not for acclaim, for this. I pointed at the photograph. For an afternoon, for a laugh, for a child holding a flower. We will not stop. We will not yield. We will not accept protectorate status because protectorate status means someone else decides whether our children get to find dandelions in the yard. And that is a decision we will never surrender. My voice had risen. I brought it back down. You can break our planets. We'll live on the pieces. You can dissolve our ships. We'll build more with our bare hands. You can know all our secrets. We'll make them irrelevant by being exactly what we are in the open. You can build walls we can't break. We'll sit outside them and plant gardens until you wonder what you're hiding from. You can touch our minds. I looked at the speaker of silence. And if you do, you'll find 7 billion versions of this photograph. 7 billion afternoons in parks. 7 billion reasons to keep going. You will find a species so saturated with love and grief and stubborn, irrational hope that I honestly don't know what it would do to you. The speaker of silence blinked. It was the first time I'd seen her blink. That's not a threat, I said. It's a warning, not about what we'll do to you, but about what you'll become if you try to own us. Because love is contagious, grief is contagious, hope is the most infectious thing in the universe. You cannot absorb a species like ours without being changed by us. You cannot control 7 billion people who each carry their own personal reason to fight, because you can't take those reasons away. They're already gone. They live in the past, in photographs and memories, and you cannot reach the past. I lowered my hand. I don't have a weapon. I have a photograph of my dead wife and my dead daughter on a sunny afternoon 7 years ago, and I am telling you as the least qualified, most broken, most human person in this room, that this photograph is more dangerous than anything you've shown me today. Nobody spoke. The photograph glowed on the dome, Lena laughing, Maya and her dandelion, the golden light. 5 empires stared at it. The most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy looked at a picture of a woman and a child in a park, and none of them could find words. I stood on my bare metal platform and waited. My hands were shaking. The adrenaline that had carried me through the speech was metabolizing into something colder, and I could feel the crash coming the moment when my body would present the bill for what I'd just done, and the cost would be everything I had. But not yet. Not yet. Vorath moved first. The High Commander of the Rathani Dominion, 7 feet of armored predator, representative of a civilization that had been making war for 9,000 years, leaned forward on his platform. Your mate, he said. She was a scientist? It wasn't the question I expected. Yes. She studied alien life. Microbial ecosystems, yes. She went to an alien world to understand it, not to conquer it, not to exploit it, to understand it. That's what she did. Vorath was silent for a moment, and the child went with her. Maya went everywhere Lena went, into the unknown. Yes. Another silence. Then Vorath straightened and said something I will never forget. The Rathani send warriors into the unknown, he said. Humans send families. He stepped back from the edge of his platform. The Rathani Dominion withdraws its claim. The emergent species is not a protectorate candidate. It is something else. I am not yet certain what. The Blossom speaker spoke next. Her voice had changed. The 3-layered harmony had shifted to something lower, more resonant, almost a hum. Ambassador Kane, she said, you asked if the Valith could grow a dandelion. I did. We cannot. Our bioengineering is functional. Every organism we create serves a purpose. We have never... She paused, her tendrils curling inward. We have never grown something purely for beauty. The concept is, we have a word for it. Lithani. It means a waste that fills. We considered it a paradox, a logical impossibility. She looked at the photograph. Your mate's laughter. Your child's focus on the flower. These are lithanii, things that serve no function and yet are clearly essential. Her bioluminescence flickered, not the aggressive patterns from before, but something softer, almost tentative. The Valith Collective withdraws its claim. We would like to study this concept, if the humans would allow it. Factor 9 took longer. He stood on his black platform and looked at me with those depthless eyes, and I could see him calculating. The Corvain were always calculating. That was their nature. Every interaction was an equation, every emotion a variable, every relationship a transaction. Ambassador Kane, he said finally, I used your loss against you. In Corvain operational doctrine, this is standard practice. Identify vulnerability, exploit it, achieve objective. I know. The objective was to prevent you from presenting a claim. In this, I failed. A pause. I do not often fail. I imagine not. Your response to the exploitation of your vulnerability was not to deny the vulnerability. You expanded it. You made it larger. You placed your grief on the dome for every species to see, and then argued that it was a source of strength. He tilted his head. This is not a strategy that exists in Corvain doctrine. No, I said, it wouldn't be. Why not? I thought about it. Because it requires you to actually feel the grief, not simulate it, not analyze it, feel it. And that means accepting the possibility that it will destroy you. You can't use vulnerability as a weapon unless you're genuinely vulnerable. There's no way to fake it. Factor 9 was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different, still flat, still precise, but with something underneath it that I hadn't heard before. The Corvain Nexus has been collecting intelligence for 6,000 years, he said. We have cataloged the secrets of every species we have encountered. We know what every civilization hides. He paused. We do not know what it is like to carry a photograph. He straightened. The Corvain Nexus withdraws its claim. The emergent species presents a variable we have not adequately modeled. Further study is required before any positioning can be determined. It was the most Corvain thing anyone had ever said, and somehow it was enough. Torvan was brief. The Dotheron were always brief. We build things that endure, he said. You love things that don't. He looked at the photograph. I think maybe you are better engineers than we are. He withdrew his claim without another word. The speaker of silence was last. She stepped to the edge of her crystal platform, the one that had cracked earlier when Factor 9 had exposed her secrets. She looked at me, and I felt that membrane again, the thin barrier between her mind and mine. But this time, she didn't push against it. Thomas, she said. It was the first time anyone in the chamber had used my first name. When I touched your mind at the beginning of this summit, I felt what you carry. I felt the weight of the photograph before you showed it to us. I know, I said, because somehow I had known. Do you know why I abstained from the initial vote? I shook my head. Because when I touched your mind, I felt your grief, and underneath the grief, I felt something I have never encountered in any species, in any mind, in 900 years of psionic contact. She paused. You were grieving, and you were grateful. At the same time, in the same thought, you were carrying the worst pain of your life, and you were thankful for the experience that caused it. Not resigned, not accepting. Thankful. You were glad you had loved them, even though loving them destroyed you. I couldn't speak. My chest was too tight. The Tessari live a very long time, she said. We are careful with our attachments because we know the cost. We love rarely, and when we lose, we seal the wound and move on. We consider this wisdom. She paused. You consider it cowardice, and I am beginning to think you might be right. She looked at the photograph one more time. The Tessari Communion does not merely withdraw its claim, she said. The Tessari Communion formally recognizes the species known as humanity as a sovereign civilization of the Concord. Not because of your power, because of your weight. The formal recognition passed unanimously. It took another 3 hours of procedural formality documents, seals, declarations, and a ceremonial exchange of diplomatic credentials that involved me standing in the right place and saying the right words while Chen whispered instructions in my ear. By the end of it, I was running on chemical fumes and the kind of exhaustion that makes the world look slightly transparent. But it was done. Humanity was sovereign, not a protectorate, not a vassal. A recognized civilization with full standing in the Concord of Five, which, as several delegates noted with varying degrees of bemusement, was now technically the Concord of Six. I found a quiet corridor after the ceremony. The fulcrum was enormous, and its builders had included spaces that seemed designed for exactly this: small alcoves with a viewport and a bench, places where diplomats could sit and be alone with whatever they were carrying. I sat down. I took out the photograph. I looked at it. Lena was still laughing. Maya was still holding her dandelion. The afternoon was still golden. The tears came then, not dramatic, not cathartic, not the kind of crying that resolves something, just the quiet, ongoing leaking of a container that has been full for 7 years and was never designed to hold this much for this long. Ambassador. I looked up. The Speaker of Silence was standing at the entrance to the alcove. Without the dome's crystal lighting, she looked smaller, more like a person and less like a force of nature. "May I sit?" she asked. I nodded. She sat beside me on the bench and we looked out at the stars together. "In the chamber," she said, "you said that love is contagious, that hope is infectious." I said a lot of things in the chamber. I'm not sure all of them were coherent. They were. She paused. "When you held up the photograph and spoke about your daughter, about the dandelion, I felt something move through the chamber. Not words, not argument, something older. Every delegate in that room felt it, even Factor 9, though he will deny it for the rest of his life." I looked at the photograph. "It's just a picture." "No," the Speaker of Silence said, "it is proof." "Proof of what?" "That the universe matters, that it is worth engaging with, that the correct response to mortality is not to build bigger walls or grow sharper weapons or collect more secrets." She looked at me. "The correct response to mortality is to sit in a park with someone you love and pay attention to the afternoon." I didn't say anything for a while. "I miss them," I said finally. "Every day, every hour, some days." "I know. It doesn't get easier." "No." She was quiet for a moment. "But you make it mean something. And that capacity, I have been alive for 900 years, Thomas, and I have never seen anything more powerful." We sat together in the alcove, the ambassador and the Speaker of Silence, watching the stars turn slowly past the viewport. The orange sun of the fulcrum system cast long amber light across the floor. After a while, she said, "Tell me about the dandelion." So I did. I told her about the yard in Portland and the way Maya's eyes went wide when she saw the yellow flower growing between the cracks in the concrete, how she squatted down with that toddler's gravity, her whole world narrowing to this one bright thing, how she pulled it free with a fistful of dirt still clinging to the roots and held it up to Lena with an expression of such pure triumph that Lena started laughing and couldn't stop. I told her about the afternoon, the blanket, the sandwiches Lena couldn't make without burning something, the way the sunlight came through the old oak tree in patterns that moved on Maya's face like water, how Maya refused to put the dandelion down, how she carried it through lunch, through her nap, through the walk back to my mother's house, how she fell asleep in the car still holding it, and when I lifted her out, the dandelion was crushed against her chest, petals flattened, stem bent, and she was smiling in her sleep. I told her how I took the photograph, how Lena didn't know I was taking it, how it was the last trip we took together on Earth before the Kepler assignment, how I actually printed it on paper, because Lena always said that digital photos were just promises and real photos were proof. The Speaker of Silence listened. She didn't speak. She didn't touch my mind. She just sat beside me and let the story exist between us, the way a fire exists between two people on a cold night. When I was done, the alcove was darker. The fulcrum had rotated, and the viewport now showed deep space, no sun, no station, just stars. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For carrying it, for 7 years, for showing us." She stood. "The galaxy is old, Thomas, and it has been powerful for a very long time. But I think it has been empty. I think we built all of our weapons because we had nothing else to build for." She moved toward the corridor, then stopped. "I am going to try something," she said. "When I return to my world, something your species seems to understand and mine has forgotten." "What's that?" "I am going to find something beautiful and useless and hold on to it." She left. Her footsteps made no sound. The shuttle ride back was quiet. Chen sat across from me, reviewing the recognition documents on her tablet. Webb was asleep, his notebook open on his lap, pen still in hand. Priya was at the comm station, transmitting the formal records to Earth, her face lit by the blue glow of the display. "Sir," Chen said without looking up. "Yeah." "What you did in there?" She paused. "Ilara would have done something different." "I know." She would have argued legal frameworks, treaties, precedent. She would have found a procedural avenue and exploited it. "I know." "It might have worked." Chen looked up. "But it wouldn't have changed anything. The next summit, the next generation, they'd have had the same conversation. Stronger powers, weaker humanity, same equation." She put down her tablet. "What you did changed the equation. I showed them a photograph. You showed them something they didn't have." She held my gaze. "And now they want it." I thought about the Blossom speaker asking to study Lithania. Beautiful uselessness. About Vorath's quiet recognition that humans send families into the unknown. About Factor 9 admitting he had never modeled what it means to carry a photograph. About Torvan, the builder of eternal walls, suggesting that loving impermanent things might be a higher form of engineering. About the speaker of silence, resolving to find something beautiful and hold on to it. "I didn't plan any of it," I said. "I panicked and told the truth." Chen almost smiled. "Yes, sir. That's the most human thing you could have done." We reached Earth's orbit 16 hours later. The UN orbital platform was crowded. Director Chen was there, along with a contingent of officials, military advisors, and a press corps that I had no intention of speaking to. Priya handled them. She was better at it than I was. Director Chen met me at the docking port. He shook my hand, and his grip was warmer than I expected from a man who resembled a filing cabinet. "You did it," he said. "We got lucky." "We got you." He paused. "I'm sorry about what the Corvain did, using Lena and Maya like that." I shook my head. He gave me my opening. If he hadn't forced the grief into the room, I might not have had the courage to put it there myself. Director Chen studied me. "Ilara always said you were the best person on her team." "Ilara said I was the best bag carrier on her team." "No, she said you were the best person. She said you understood something the rest of us missed." He tilted his head. "I think I know what she meant now." He walked me to a private lounge where I could decompress before the debrief. At the door, he stopped. "Thomas, the Concord wants a permanent human ambassador, full status. The post is yours if you want it." I stood in the doorway of the lounge and felt the weight of that offer. A permanent post, a seat among the great powers, the chance to shape humanity's place in the galaxy for decades to come. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need." He left. I went into the lounge, sat down in a chair by the window, and looked out at Earth. It hung there the way it always hangs, blue and white and impossibly fragile, turning slowly in the dark, covered in parks and gardens and yards where dandelions grew between the cracks. I took out the photograph. I looked at it for a long time. Then I put it back in my wallet, in the place where it always lived, close to my chest, where I could feel its weight with every heartbeat. I took the post. 3 months later, I stood on the fulcrum again, this time in an office with my name on the door and a view of the orange star. The office was still bare. I hadn't decorated it yet. There was a desk, a chair, a comm station, and a window. On the desk, in a small frame, was the photograph. A woman laughing, a child holding a dandelion. An afternoon that was gone and would never be gone because I carried it, and carrying it was the point. On my first official day, a small package arrived. No return address, but the molecular signature on the wrapping was Valith. Inside was a glass sphere, and inside the sphere, growing in a tiny bed of engineered soil, was a single dandelion. It was the first beautiful, useless thing the Valith had ever made. I put it next to the photograph and I sat at my desk, and I began the work of introducing the galaxy to the strange, grieving, stubborn, hopeful species that it sent me. Outside the window, the stars were the same ones Lena had wanted to study, and Maya had been too young to name. I looked at them the way my daughter had looked at a dandelion, with the intense, absolute attention of someone who knows, without knowing they know, that everything is temporary and everything matters, and the correct response to a universe that will eventually take everything from you is to love it so fiercely that even the losing is worth it. That's humanity's weapon. It's not a weapon at all, it's just a photograph, and the willingness to show it to a room full of gods and say, "This is what I'm fighting for. What are you fighting for?" Most of them, it turns out, had forgotten. We reminded them, for Lena, for Maya, for every afternoon we carry forward.